Hey guys, so today we're going to be starting with a new module within our school year called the short story genre, and it kind of pains me that I'm not able to teach this in front of you guys because it's one of my favorite things to end the year with. So these are actual short stories that you will come across in CJEP, but by analyzing it before, you'll have a greater advantage, I think, than other students. So as we're saying goodbye to the ministry exam finally, we're going to be looking at the short story genre, and I'll tell you a bit about what we're going to be looking at and what kind of the plot structure includes. So when we look at the short story genre, what is a short story? It's a type of fiction. It's anywhere between 7,000 to 10,000 words to be read in one sitting. So literally, like, it doesn't take a whole day to read it. Every word counts, so the author chose very carefully exactly what he wanted or she wanted to include. Now, the differences between a short story and a novel: a short story is very simplistic. It has a single tone, mood, and emotion. It covers a short time span, so it could be from an evening, a day, to a couple of days. A novel usually covers many years, like in To Kill a Mockingbird with Scout and how she was growing up. And a short story has a handful of characters that you can literally count on your fingers how many there are, versus a novel, you have a plethora of characters that exist. Now, the elements of a short story we'll be looking at are the title, the setting, characters, the plot, conflict, point of view, theme, and the three literary devices that are most commonly used, and we'll be referring back to them throughout the next couple of weeks. So the title is important because it sets the mood, it arouses interest, it could suggest the setting, mention the main character, or in some cases, it'll name an important object, which kind of you have to think about because there's something a bit more behind that. Now, setting is divided into four particular categories. So setting is the time and place, but it's more than that. It could be something very specific around the world. It could be a time period. It could be something of socioeconomic status, like a wealthy suburbs or an impoverished city. And then, of course, we have even something really specific like a building or a room, which in a couple of stories we do see that. Now, methods of characterization, we had looked at this already last year when we started with Mockingbird. So there's two types. You have direct characterization, and then you have indirect characterization. Direct is when the author legit tells you what the person is feeling, and indirect is that they use particular behavior and events to kind of have you guess and deduce what's going on behind that character's life. This could be done and seen through the character's thoughts, words, and actions, the comments of other characters, and the character's physical appearance. Now, the plot is what we're going to be referring to. Every short story follows an archetype plot. And this is something you've seen in French class back in Sec 1, which was like la schéma narratif. So you have like your situation initiale, élément déclencheur, le dénouement. Those are all things we'll be looking at today. Now, the plot of a story works really well for almost anything, specifically, I would say even Disney films. So we're going to look at The Lion King as an example. I think everyone pretty much saw that. So when we start with the introduction of The Lion King, we have the baboon that takes, baby Simba, the circle of life. And then you have the Lion King at that moment, which is Mufasa with his cub wife, Sarabi, that are pretty much just like chilling with each other. And they're like, oh, yes, it's my child. And then the turning point happens where Scar, the black lion, takes over and kills Mufasa and leaves Simba for dead. Then Simba's all by himself. Now, the rising action, which is like the péripétie, we have Simba being trained by Timon and Pumbaa. We have him learning how to hunt. He comes across Nala, and then they feel the love tonight, wink, wink. And then as the story progresses, he returns back to the Pride Rock to take revenge upon Scar for what he's done to his father. That's when we reach the climax. So then there's this huge battle between Scar and Simba. Scar dies. And then, like in old Disney fashion, everything that was once inflamed and dark is now growing back again, filled with greenery and sunshine. Following action, everything goes back to normal. The hyenas leave, Scar is gone. Now Simba is crowned as the new Lion King. But because of what happened in the rising action with Nala in the jungle of Feeling the Love Tonight, Simba actually ends up having a daughter of his own. And then we have the new cub, and the baboon takes the cub and says the circle of life again. And that's pretty much the plot of Lion King. This works literally for every short story that you guys are going to read. So This is just the definitions of what we looked at so far. So introduction is the start of the story. The turning point is the start of the main conflict. So every story has a main conflict. If it doesn't, then there's no point of actually reading it. We're just going to be reading like words. Rising action, it's a series of conflicts. Climax is the most intense moment. So it could be the final battle between good versus evil, or it could be something of a mental realization that takes place. Then you have falling action, everything goes back to normal. And then resolution is a conclusion. Now, conflicts. Conflict is a struggle between opposing forces. Most all stories contain a conflict. It could be external or internal. So I'll give you the difference between what external and internal is. So when we look at conflict here, internal is basically something that happens within oneself, so person versus self. Then external, we have all kinds. We have person versus society, which is like a government, not like a group of people. Person versus nature, and I'll talk to you more about that. We have person versus fate. Now, fate is interesting. It's all about trying to avoid the inevitable, okay? Like someone told you in the beginning of the story or film that you're going to die, your whole story is trying to avoid that, to basically avoid your destiny, which is kind of very similar to what we saw with Macbeth. Then we have person versus machine, which is usually technology. So some examples of person versus self, we've seen it with The Lion King, right? Trying to become this being that you didn't know you had to become at such a young age. Most stories all deal with developing a moral compass. Person versus person, usually we see it between a evil versus good character. We've seen it in horror films like Scream, you know, where you're running away from a serial killer. That's definitely person versus person. Or something as simple as Rocky works really well. Person versus society is usually when one person is either falsely accused of something, or he's or she running away from the government's standards and rules. So something as simple as the Hunger Games works really well. Person versus nature is basically anything involving natural disasters or occurrences, or it could be even animals. In some films, you could have a natural disaster with animals, and we just call that Sharknado, okay? Person versus fate is when you want to try to control or avoid the inevitable. So films like Final Destination, which is a film about a bunch of teenagers they get premonitions that they're going to die. And what ends up happening is that they try to avoid this death, but no matter what, it catches up to them. And they all die in like messed up ways. Person versus machine is anything that is created by man that goes against man. So like RoboCop could be something very technological, or the Terminator. Like these are just like some examples. Now we'll look at point of view. Now point of view is done in three ways. It could be first person point of view, like the story is told through the perspective of the narrator or the character. So you'll see a lot of I. Second person point of view is rare, but I don't know if you guys remember those stories when you were young where it says you are walking down a hall and you see two doors. If you choose door number 1, turn to page 50. If you choose door number 2, turn to page 300. And then when you go to that page, it continues the story. So kind of like choose your own future kind of stories. Third person point of view is what we see most often in stories. There's 3 types. There's omniscient, limited omniscient, and objective. Very briefly, omniscient is you see it through a number of characters' eyes. So all of the characters know about each other and the author knows about everyone. Limited is only one specific character knows what everyone else is feeling, including their own emotions. And objective is only what is said and done is recorded and not what is felt. So I don't know what you're thinking, but I see what you're doing. It's not crazy important to know the differences between the 3, but you'll kind of get the vibe of it when you're reading the stories. Theme. Theme is a central idea, message, or insight about life or human behavior that a story reveals. We've done this very briefly with the themes present in Mockingbird and Macbeth. Here, the stories all have different types of themes, but it's more than just the topic here. So look, let's say topic is strength. The theme could be what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So cheesy. Love could be a topic, but the theme is love is a two-way street. So your topic is one word. The theme is what is it about the topic that the story is about, okay? 4 ways to find the theme is through the character's experiences, the emotions that are evoked, it could be the main conflict, or even just the main message in general. Those are 4 ways you can find the theme. Now the fun part. So 3 literary devices that are very common in literature. We'll be looking at metaphor, foreshadowing, and irony. We've kind of already mention these very briefly throughout the year. So metaphors, when you're comparing two unrelated things without using like or as, here are some examples. Love is a thorny rose because love hurts. Time is a thief because every day as you get older, you're losing your youth. A stench of failure is basically saying that you're comparing something that smells bad to someone not doing well in something. A roller coaster of emotions is like, you know, you have highs and you have your lows. Here's some examples. Jenna's mouth is one huge metal factory. Life is one long, scary roller coaster. She is the apple of my eye. A lot of students are not really sure about that, but the actual eye, like the round part of it, and saying that you are the apple of my eye is saying that when I look at you, you are the focus, and that's what I see. Foreshadowing, it usually, you'll get to know what that is when you read the story. Once you're done the story and you go back, you'll know that what this was in fact foreshadowing. There's no way of knowing it beforehand. So if you watched Star Wars, and plot twist here, but this little kid, Anakin Skywalker, will become Darth Vader, and we kind of see it because it's foreshadowed. Here is another example of that. You know, inside the egg is a chicken. Irony, there's three sorts. We have verbal irony, so that's usually sarcasm. Dramatic irony is when what the character thinks to be true and what we, the reader, know to be true is different. So I know something that the character doesn't know. And then situational irony is what these stories will kind of include. So it's the contrast between what happens and what was expected. So we'll see examples of that. So here we have two signs here. We have childhood obesity. Don't take it lightly. And then right underneath you have my kind of shopping spree. So imagine you're driving, you have no idea, like, am I eating or am I like dieting? I don't know. Here you have enjoy the home zone advantage. Not quite the setting to put that in. Self-explanatory. And then here, what makes this ironic? Spider-Man is stuck in spider webs. Okay. And that's pretty much what we're going to be looking at today. So the first story you guys are going to read on your own is really short. It's one of my favorite stories. It's called Death by Scrabble. It's about a man and his wife that are stuck inside, kind of like us. They're playing a game of Scrabble. It's super hot outside, and they're not communicating with each other, but they're communicating through the game of Scrabble. But there's something wrong with the Scrabble game, and I'll leave you guys to read it. Once you're done reading the story, there's a short little activity which asks you what conflicts are present, what theme is important, what are some examples of irony or foreshadowing. Those are kind of the similar questions I'll be asking you. Once it's submitted, I'll take a look and give you guys feedback to see that you guys are on the right path. Every class, you guys will be reading a story, and there'll be a few questions for you guys to answer. There's a total of 10. We're going to be looking at contemporary short stories that you'll see in your everyday life. There'll be stories that are of the sci-fi genre, so using technological advancements and how it kind of goes against people. And then we'll also have the horror genre, which is usually Edgar Allan Poe, and that we'll save it towards the end of the unit, only because it's one of the more difficult stories. So also a little heads up for you guys, on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. I will be doing a Zoom conference. So if you guys have any questions pertaining to the stories, if there's something you don't understand, if you just want to say hi, I'll be there for you guys. That's pretty much it. So enjoy and have a great day. Thanks.